Hi everybody, it's Steph from Stellium Astrology, and I am recording this message from my car. I'm just trying to find the time where I can at the moment. Mercury is at the same degree but not the same minute as Pluto is at the same degree but not the same minute as my Mercury. It's very close. Uranus has been trine to my Sun and my Lilith and is just very close to just being on my Chiron. It's been on there a few times already. And Jupiter obviously is very nearby because the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is imminent. So I've had Jupiter trine my Sun as well. I've had all sorts going on. I was desperately praying that Jupiter trine my 8th house Sun would mean I'd win the lottery or something, but nope. That didn't happen. So that should tell you something about the way things are for me at the moment. I just feel like a big cash injection would really make a huge difference to my life. And that's not a plea, like a plea for donations or a cry for help at all. That's just a general statement. So I had a message from Cara on Sunday, and she was asking about what it would mean for people who have Chiron in Taurus. What the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction could mean. And it's an interesting one because obviously I have been processing a lot of Chiron stuff because I too have Chiron in Taurus, and I've got Uranus. Literally, he's been on top of my Chiron twice already, and I think this might be the third time, or maybe he's done it once. I don't know. Either way, I'll tell you what happened to me when Uranus was on my Chiron. So, but just before I do, I just want to say that at the Royal Albert Hall event, which didn't go as planned for me anyway, I happened to I've met Melanie Reinhardt in the past, just when I've been at conferences, sitting at the same table as her and stuff like that. But I actually got to spend some quality time with Melanie Reinhardt, and it was really amazing to connect with such a brilliant person, brilliant mind. And she is the Queen of Chiron, and I also happen to be very good friends with a very good friend of Melanie's. So she also is a Chiron enthusiast, interpreter, channeler. So it's interesting that I have these connections. And I also have my 12th house Chiron, which when I told Melanie that that's where my Chiron was, she went, "Oh, so you're really plugged into the mains." And I was like, yes, I guess I am. So getting back to, oh my goodness, my window wipers just came on by themselves. So just getting back to Chiron in Taurus, and my Chiron really, when Uranus moved over my Chiron the first time, I've recorded this for my patrons, who I record lots of private podcast episodes for, and videos and all sorts. So there's like a deep dive. It's a kind of look at what was arising for me as Uranus was on my Chiron, and it was very connected. Now, I'd just like to say I have Chiron in the 12th house in Taurus. Both Taurus and Scorpio are signs that are intercepted for me, and what that means is that using the Placidus house system, which I don't always use, but I find interesting, that the houses there's no house cusp in either of the signs of Scorpio or Taurus. I've got a house cusp in Libra and a house cusp in Sagittarius, but not in Scorpio. And then on the opposite side, Aries and Cancer, Gemini, gosh, my brain. So it means that intercepted houses are almost a little bit like mysterious enough in themselves. Someone described to me, an intercepted house is like having a house, call it an old house, and there are lots of rooms in this house, but there's one room that has got its door locked and you just don't have the key for it, and you never get that key. You can't really get into it. and there's something going on behind that door, but you can't quite connect with it. And I thought that's a really great analogy for intercepted houses. So as you can probably imagine, connecting with Taurus for me and connecting with my Chiron in Taurus has been a very difficult task. However, Uranus moving through there in Taurus and over my Chiron illuminated so much for me. It really, like when we say an awakening, it was a bit of a moment. I did have some moments with it. I've recorded a whole video on that, but in a nutshell, it was very connected to the sale of my grandmother's house and basically my family tree, and just some connections. Like I think we found the deeds for the house when it was bought. There were lots of really interesting correspondences, and it was all very much part of my grieving process for losing my grandmother. Her funeral was in February of 2021, a few months before my little boy was born. So I was pregnant at the funeral. We were all social distancing. I wasn't allowed to cuddle anybody. I was too scared to. It was a very, very sad time, and obviously losing anybody in the pandemic was awful because you just couldn't be with your family the way you wanted to. So that was it was interesting for me to have those revelations, and it really helped to sort of give me a little bit of closure. Now, in general, Chiron in Taurus has got something to do with body image. It's got something to do with, and I would say with body image, I would say it could be a dysmorphic image of the body. It could be that you are not happy with what you see in the mirror for whatever reason, because I feel with Chiron, and I suppose we need to understand Chiron a little bit, we have to understand that Chiron is like reading Saturn and Uranus combined in the natal chart. So it's where we don't fit in, where we feel rejected, we feel outcast in some way, we feel just different to everybody. But at the same time, we also feel fear. There's an element of fear. There's an element of, being incredibly hard on ourselves. All the things, the challenges that come with Saturn and all the challenges that come with Uranus. I'm not saying that it's exactly those, but that's the kind of feeling of it. So, with that said, having those kind of feelings in a sign in, obviously in Taurus, and it being represented by the asteroid Chiron, you have to kind of think about how that could be expressed. And if we look at what's going on in society at the moment, we are seeing a lot of people who want to make changes to their physical body in some way or another. Like, there's so much cosmetic surgery going on, and it's like a lot of people just getting fillers and Botox and things like that. When you look at things like TikTok or Instagram, there are videos of people just doing, these makeovers, and there's just like so much makeup, and pretty much everybody's got like these lips that have been injected. You can see it. It's a very pillowy lips, I guess. And one of my friends was telling me, one of my friends who has Botox, she was like, you can just tell which influencers have got Botox. And I just thought, I just haven't ever noticed it before, because I don't know, I'm not going to say that I haven't ever thought about it, because I have got some pretty big, my friend calls them her WTF lines. I've got some WTF lines, and it's those things that you kind of consider, let's get rid of it or whatever. And I just thought, no, stick with natural, just stick with it if you can for as long as possible, because it just feels like there's so much of this everywhere. And so you're seeing that, and then there's also people who have got this kind of I don't even know what the medical term would be, but there's this sense of not feeling that you're born into the right body. So it's transgenderism, I guess, is what we could call it. I think some people don't even necessarily feel like they identify with a particular gender even. They just are neither, Who's that actress who was in Juno and is now transitioned to male? I can't remember their name. Oh, gosh. But anyway, played Juno. I was literally, is it Elliot Page now they're known as? they've transitioned to male. And like there's a lot of people that are transitioning, and that's a very Uranian thing. I've been told, particularly Uranus in the 8th house can express as a kind of a detachment from assigned sexuality. Is it even sexuality though? It's gender, isn't it? And they're different. So either way, so there's this whole conversation about that, and it's a very, very big conversation. It's hugely controversial, and it's just another expression of how the body, how Uranus, and I mean Uranus entered Taurus in 2018, and I know this stuff's been going on way longer than that, but it feels very much like with all of the outer planets, all the transpersonal planets, we experience them as fashions, trends, what gets brought into the public eye, what is current. So currently we are experiencing these shifts in gender identity, in sexuality. And so there's it's a very interesting phenomena. What I find interesting is that a lot of people with Chiron in Taurus were coming of age in their adolescence around the time where self-harming was particularly prevalent among young people. So people that were self-harming were expressing their pain physically through their bodies, attempting to express themselves and to I suppose, it's funny because I've read about bloodletting now, so I understand that there could be another angle to this, but it's not about the many variety of angles, I guess, for me. It's more about the kind of the symbolism that is contained. And so that kind of period in time when that was quite a common issue among teens, that was pretty much the generation who had Chiron in Taurus. So it's an interesting thing to observe with the kind of impact it has on people and how they connect with their bodies. It's definitely got something to do with self-esteem, and that's something that my dear friend Vicky Maloney, who is one of the Chiron queens that I know, she definitely talks about Chiron in Taurus being very much about self-esteem and about, I guess, identifying with the body, or seeing the body as a type of not just a channel or a vessel in which we, embody our physical form on this earth, but actually it is something we are so connected to, particularly the people with Chiron in Taurus, that it's not like they're seeking perfection, although you could say it's a potential because of the way that people have been with their cosmetics and stuff. But I think more than anything, it's about being very aware of what they perceive to be I don't want to say perfection, but it's like there's this kind of really understanding what is truly not aesthetic to them. And like with Venus is very much about aesthetics. It's very much about beauty, isn't it? And beauty standards, and Taurus being a Venus ruled sign is very connected to beauty. So I would say that there is something about dysmorphia with Chiron in Taurus. It's not just about that though. Circling back to what I was talking about when I had Uranus move over my Chiron, there's a connection to property, to I guess like accumulation of wealth, and maybe even actual financial wealth, where we are looking at the bricks and mortar of what Taurus can represent. If you think about everything that Taurus, all the keywords, all the buzzwords for Taurus, there's this sense of ownership and possession and things like that. And for me, it was like having to let go of that house, which was one of the hardest parts of that grieving process. I just think that it's very interesting how everybody processes grief differently. And during that period, there were some very interesting conversations with like my mum and with my cousins. And, there was, I think with myself, my sister and my cousin Gemma, we were all very, very connected to that house. And I don't know if we were more than anybody else. But when I look at the fact that we've all got our charts were very much linked up to the astrology of that house. It's very interesting how the synastry of something can be part of the grief process, how you're literally, your relationship with something is about how you grieve. But definitely Taurus, Chiron in Taurus for me, you can imagine it was a real pain point for me, especially when the sale of the house and the deeds and finding headstones and my mum processing all of that information, it all came about with that transit. So what I think Chiron in Taurus is, and not necessarily Chiron in Taurus, but with Taurus, what sort of the river that runs beneath it, if we think about, going subterranean about this, I think that there's something to be said about how deeply we feel our insecurities, because Taurus is about security. And I think that if it's about having security and having something that makes you feel safe, which I think that Taurus is very driven by that, Chiron in Taurus disturbs that, and it creates a lack mentality. And it can be a lack as far as beauty is concerned, it can be a lack as far as money is concerned, a lack as far as property is concerned, it could be, a lack as far as just general confidence and general feeling like you deserve something because you're worth it. A great slogan for Taurus is because you're worth it. So, I think that Chiron in Taurus can be incredibly hard on itself. And depending on the house, it could give you more context. I think even with Chiron, they say read it for the house, not the sign as much. But I think that obviously the sign also gives some indication. So if you are somebody who has Chiron in Taurus in their 12th house like myself, as Melanie Reinhardt said, wow, you're plugged into the mains. So I guess anybody with a 12th house Chiron is pretty much experiencing other people's pain with them. Hence I don't watch the news, hence I can't follow anything on social media that talks about anything just remotely heart-wrenching or awful, and seeing people taken from their families, for example. As working in my previous life when I was an immigration officer and seeing some of the stuff that happened and the way people got off on that stuff, I just couldn't do that job for long. It really mentally disturbed me, and emotionally I just wasn't strong enough. And I'm glad I wasn't the kind of person that could do that kind of job, because I don't know how people go home at night and sleep well knowing that that's what they're doing to people's families, to people's lives. Speaking as an ex-immigration officer myself, so don't come at me if that bothers you. So yeah, that feels like 12th house Chiron. It's almost like there is literally no boundaries between you and the other, and you're here to experience the pain on behalf of the collective, but also to use what you've learned from that pain to help with other people's healing process. And that is why I'm a Reiki master. That's why I am able to go and give people, I'm not saying you have to have a 12th house Chiron to be a Reiki practitioner, there's loads of other factors, but when I had solar arc Chiron direct over my ascendant, that's when I qualified as a Reiki master. And I think that's actually when I got into all of my healing practices, really, in a big way. So, it's not necessarily a terrible thing to have Chiron anywhere in your chart. The thing is, it is just going to be pain that you have to kind of live with through your lifetime, because you can't heal it yourself. Chiron, in Taurus, in the first house, a friend of mine who has Chiron rising in Taurus, she is literally living with a chronic condition, chronic pain, and she has lupus. So, she's dealing with a condition, a health condition that makes her vulnerable. She was extremely vulnerable during the pandemic. She is somebody that can't overexert herself, or she's very, very wiped out. Some days she's in a lot of physical pain. There are some people, and I can't remember the name of the person, but she came up with some kind of mindfulness movement. I really wish I could remember. Richard Swatton talks about her, and my partner used to work for a spinal injuries charity, and he knew all about this woman because they used her work a lot to help the patients who were suffering with constant pain through their spinal injuries, where their spine is sending off messages all the time that they're in pain, and they're kind of paralysed, but they're still in pain all the time. So it was all about transcending the pain by breathing, being in the present moment, and focusing on something other than the pain, which pain is such a almost like an electrical response. Like, obviously it depends on the pain, but if it's like a nerve pain, it's almost like an electric shock almost. So to be able to transcend that takes a lot of practice and mind over matter. So there's something really interesting about that too, because there's ways that you can live with pain, you can use it to help other people, but it doesn't mean that you can ever heal yourself from it. Now, Chiron moves through all of the houses. I think it's 52 years in total. It's an asteroid, so he has an erratic orbit. And I'll do a show about Chiron, I think, another time. I think I've done quite a lot of reading. I've even got one of Melanie Reinhardt's books in my bag with me currently. I keep picking it up and putting it down. It's just one of those ones I like to just pick up, read a paragraph, put it down, let it process. But yes, Jupiter-Uranus moving over Chiron in Taurus, wherever it is in your chart, is probably going to be one about acceptance, but also a liberation in some way. So it could well be about understanding how to work with your anxieties, for example. I know somebody who's got Taurus in their, I think Chiron in their, it's on the cusp of their 5th house, but their Chiron is actually in their 4th. And it's in Taurus, I believe. And it's about anxiety for them. It's like a deep insecurity. Particularly if it's in the 4th house, for example, it would be the psychological basement, really. So there's a lot to be unpacked with that, and probably generational stuff too. So yes, it's with Jupiter coming along. I mean, Uranus is already liberating. Uranus is already a planet which awakens. It already cuts us free. It severs us from the things that are holding us in place, binding us, restricting us, the Saturnian stuff. It's literally, Uranus is literally an antithesis of Saturn. I think he is, how did it work? Was he Saturn's son? Oh gosh, I'm going to get my mythology wrong. Regardless, the idea here is that, the Uranus is here to literally break, to shatter the permanence of Saturn. So it could well be that this is about finding a way out from a perceived pain point, from a something that's been holding us back. And I would say that it's been affecting confidence, affecting your perception of how secure you are, how secure you want to be, how safe you feel. It could well be that maybe you've been waiting for work on your house and you know that you're stuck in the house that you're in for a really long time. But if the house, they give the go-ahead and the work is either started or completed around the date of the conjunction, and it just means suddenly you've got freedom of movement again. And actually you weren't as restricted, or, perhaps it's added value to the property, and so it's actually given you permission to grow, because it's, Jupiter is the planet of growth. So there's a sense of severing ties, of growth in the process. I'm really reminded of a phrase when I was studying counselling, which was sitting on your growing edge. And we always used to say that it was so funny because it sounded so uncomfortable and so rude to sit on your growing edge. But actually, I knew exactly what they meant. It was like, just put yourself out there, just do it. Just don't overthink it, just do it, you know? And this is honestly what I think some of this work with Chiron, Jupiter Uranus on Chiron is. In general, Jupiter Uranus as well. But with Chiron, it's like enabling some kind of freedom and liberation from the perceived pain, giving yourself permission to love yourself, you know, in some way. And, you know, even possibly understanding that our position that we're in, whether it's financial hardship, or if there is, you know, like I said, like a house issue that you're worried about, like maybe even, you know, having mold issues, or needing a restructure or something like that in your home, like adding a new like support to the structure, anything like that, there's this opportunity to see a new way or to transcend it in some way, because this, what is Uranus but it is a trans-personal planet. The word trans has popped up again. We've got transgender and all of that we were discussing earlier, but now we have this transcending. We transcend through cutting, through shattering, through rejecting. And this is another thing, you know, Uranus, people think of Aquarius and Uranus as very tolerant because they are symbols of communities who demand change because we need to be more tolerant. But what causes these movements to happen in the first place? It's intolerance. It's a lack of tolerance for being treated a certain way anymore. You know, Taurus and Venus, being the ruler of Taurus, is incredibly tolerant, and it's very compromising. But Uranus moving into a Venus-ruled Taurus has been anything but tolerant, really. I think what we've seen is like, when I say tolerance, I mean an acceptance that things are different, things have changed, that, you know, we've decided that, yes, we want to see plus size models. Yes, we want to see a genuine representation of people, you know, regardless of whether or not they've got lots of freckles and really pale skin, or ebony skin tone and, you know, curves that could put the British countryside to shame in its beauty and its, you know, its femininity and its goddess energy. You know, there's something about this Uranus moving through Taurus which has seen us embrace new beauty standards and stop body shaming and all of those really wonderful things. And, you know, it's almost like giving permission for people to just be who they want to be and to be confident regardless of anything, really, regardless of definitely traditional perspectives on what's beautiful and what's acceptable. So Chiron, that generation, Chiron in Taurus, maybe you're a little bit late to the party. Maybe you're struggling a bit with your beauty standards for yourself. Maybe you're really accepting of other people and you see how beautiful, you know, that uniqueness is. But when you look in the mirror, you're still giving yourself a hard time based on the previous standards of acceptance. And maybe now it's time to reframe the way that you're seeing yourself. Maybe it's a permission to connect with yourself in a different way. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been useful. Cara, I really hope you enjoyed this. Cara is the person who asked the question, and it was a great question. And Cara is one of my patrons, one of my original patrons. I think I've recorded episodes and videos for Cara before, and we did a show recently which I'm yet to edit and publish, but it will happen very soon, where we talked about our dreams with Richard Swatton. So that's got to come out soon. So I'm looking forward to getting that sorted, hopefully very, very soon. Try and make it my priority this weekend. And if anybody's interested in checking out the Patreon page, all you have to do is check the link in the description below. I've got links to everything there. And my Patreon page, you can be a member for a very small amount of money. One of them is probably about the cost of a large cup of coffee in Starbucks, and the other one is even cheaper than that. Or if you just really haven't got that much money to spare, then just follow me on that page. You can do that for free, and I put out content as frequently as I can. I like to share lots of astrology resources. Some I make myself, some I find myself, and I credit where credit is due. But it's kind of a bit of a mishmash of what I've got time to do and what I want to share with you. And as you guys probably know from listening to the podcast, I just want to help to inspire your learning journey when it comes to astrology, which I think is what inspires a deeper connection with who you are and what you're here to do on this planet. That's my sole purpose here, is just helping people to kind of connect with more about who they are. And perhaps that's my Chiron in Taurus journey. Maybe it's about helping people to connect with who they are, be confident, empower themselves, and to pay it forward by carrying on that healing journey in some way. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.